On May 11, 2022, Israeli forces killed Shireen Abu Akleh, a veteran Al Jazeera journalist and a Palestinian American.
وما توقف إطلاق النار رغم إنه شيرين كانت موجودة على الأرض.
But Israel didn't see Shireen's death as a human rights issue. It saw it as a PR problem. And so the disinformation started.
על פי הנתונים הראשונים שבידינו, ישנו סיכוי לא מבוטל שהעיתונאית נפגעה בכלל מירי הפלסטינים החמושים.
But eyewitness accounts and video analysis all point to Israeli gunfire. Here's what we know happened. Shireen was covering an Israeli raid in Jenin, a city in the north of the occupied West Bank. She was wearing a helmet and a flak jacket, which clearly identified her as press. Shireen was shot behind her ear, underneath the helmet, killed by Israeli fire. Journalist Shada Hanaisha was standing right next to Shireen when she was shot.
واضح يعني اللي قتلها يعني كان قاصد انه يصيبها في مكان هي ظاهر من جسمها مش مرتدية فيه الخوذة. فيعني انا بعتبر اللي حدث هو جريمة اغتيال إلنا.
And it isn't just one eyewitness account. There were multiple people who all said the same thing.
الاحتلال كان مصر يقتلنا عبر القناصة، وقعت شيرين وهي لابسة بريس. مع ذلك من حاول الإنقاذها كان يطلق عليه النار.
But it didn't matter what eyewitnesses said. Israel's goal was to deny responsibility and create confusion, and it did so deliberately by blaming Palestinians. A few hours after the shooting, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett tweeted out this video, saying that Palestinians were firing indiscriminately and falsely suggested that Palestinians were responsible for Shireen's death. And that suggestion then led to many mainstream media outlets creating headlines like these. This isn't just coincidence. The Israeli government knows how to use its statements to manipulate mainstream media. An official even took credit for their, quote, PR blitz, saying they had successfully influenced the Associated Press and BBC's coverage to cast doubt over who had killed Shireen. But here's the thing. According to witnesses at the location where Shireen was shot,
اللي ما كانش فيه لا مسلحين ولا مدنيين ولا في أي إطلاق نار.
Ali As-Samoudi is another journalist who was shot at the scene. His eyewitness testimony immediately debunked Israel's claims.
الاحتلال القاتل والمجرم قام بإطلاق النار علينا دون أي سبب. أنا أصبت بالظهر والزميل الرصاص الثاني أصابت شيرين وأدى إلى استشهادها.
But the most damning rebuttal came from Beit Tselem, a leading Israeli human rights organization. Beit Tselem researchers actually analyzed the video shared by the Israeli government. They went and refilmed the location to show that the Palestinians in this video were not responsible for Shireen's death because there was virtually no way their bullets could have reached her.
I think it's worth pointing out that this propaganda line was propagated by no less than the Israeli Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Defense Minister, other ministers, and the IDF spokesperson.
It was only after Beit Tselem's video that anyone in the Israeli government walked back the claim blaming Palestinians for Shireen's death. Israel's army chief then issued a statement saying we cannot determine by whose fire she was harmed. But the disinformation had already gone out, and the end goal was still to confuse and create more headlines like this. Israel demanded a joint investigation with the Palestinians, which the Palestinian Authority denied.
أننا قد رفضنا ونرفض التحقيق المشترك مع السلطات الإسرائيلية لأنها هي التي ارتكبت الجريمة ولأننا لا نثق بهم.
But Israel continues to shift blame towards Palestinians.
מהרשות הפלסטינית לא לעשות שום צעד לשיבוש החקירה או לזיהום תהליך החקירה בצורה שלא נוכל להגיע לחקר האמת.
Israel's military occupation kills hundreds of Palestinians every year. Last year, they killed 313 Palestinians, 71 of whom were minors. Most of them don't get the coverage Shireen's killing has received. But since Shireen was a prominent international journalist, the widespread outrage has forced Israel's biggest ally, the United States, to chime in. Still, the State Department was careful to not condemn Israel, even though Shireen was a US citizen.
Israel has the wherewithal and the capability to conduct a thorough, comprehensive investigation. They've done it before, and we expect they'll do so in this case.
Israel's military now says it's considering the possibility that an Israeli soldier shot Shireen. But here's the problem. Israel investigating itself typically never leads to any meaningful measures of accountability. Like in 2014, when an Israeli airstrike killed 4 children on a beach in Gaza. Israel said it was targeting a Hamas compound, but eyewitnesses said it was just a hut the kids were using to play hide and seek. After investigating itself, Israel determined that it was an accident and exonerated itself from any wrongdoing. Then there's the example of how Israeli forces killed a 78-year-old Palestinian-American man just earlier this year. Omar Asad was gagged and handcuffed by Israeli soldiers during a raid in the middle of the night. He died from a stress-induced heart attack caused by his injuries while he was detained.
They were hitting him, pulling him out of the car, dragging him a couple of 200-300 meters. They left him dead and they walked away from there.
So what was the punishment for causing a 78-year-old's death? The commanders of the platoon that conducted the raid were removed from their position and won't be allowed to serve as commanders for 2 years. No jail time, no external investigation, no justice for the victim's family. As some of you know, I'm Palestinian American, and I've reported from the occupied West Bank for AJ+. I've seen firsthand how Israeli forces target journalists, especially journalists who are Palestinian.
I don't speak Hebrew. I'm an American. Okay.
They are violent, aggressive, and show little regard for the freedom of press. There's a clear, systematic pattern here. In recent years, Israel has increased its attacks on members of the media with virtual impunity. Just 1 year ago, Israel bombed and flattened the offices of Al Jazeera and the Associated Press in Gaza, alleging that Hamas had used the building to fire rockets. Israel never provided Al Jazeera or the AP any evidence for its claim. Both news organizations denied the presence of any Hamas members in the building. And even when journalists have worn clearly marked protective gear saying press, Israeli forces have shot and killed them anyway, just like they did with Ahmed Abu Hussein and Yasser Murtaja in Gaza in 2018, and just like they did with Shireen in the occupied West Bank in 2022. This story is quite personal because I knew Shireen as a colleague and a friend. For years, I had watched her trailblazing reporting across the occupied Palestinian territories and looked up to her as a role model. I met Shireen in 2010 at the beginning of my career at Al Jazeera and was excited to get to know the woman who had long inspired me and countless others to become journalists. Shireen was kind, loving, humble, and fierce, and she'll be remembered as a brilliant, intrepid journalist who was the voice of the Palestinian people and their struggle for freedom. She put her life on the line for over 20 years to tell their stories, and her death is a devastating loss. Shireen touched so many of us in person, but also by her inspiring example. And the best way in which we can honor her courageous legacy is to redouble our own commitment to report the truth and the reality of life under Israeli occupation.